Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 129. Today's topic, originality. Originally it was something else, but I couldn't think of that.
I've heard that before.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build.
Welcome back. As always, my name is Jeffrey W. Ingram, and I'm here with
Michael Miller.
the one and the only. How are you doing today, Mike? You look wonderful.
Well, being the one and only makes me feel very original. The irony is that having the name Michael Miller means that I share that name with a bazillion. There's so many. I've literally met 5 other Michael Millers in my life.
The good thing is my mom spelled my first name funny.
Wrong.
So not only
Wrong is the
am
word.
I original, but people like for years would always tell me, "Oh, I'm sorry, stupid little kid. Can't you spell your own name correct?" Listen, you kindergarten teacher. It's how do I spell it again?
I don't think I ever noticed that you're. I think I might be a dumb kid because I don't think I ever realized that. Is there supposed to be another E in there?
No, it's typically R-E-Y. Jeffrey is the by far most common variation. And mine is so subtly different, most people actually don't even realize they're spelling my name wrong or that I'm spelling my name differently because it's just the E and the R are flipped around.
I never noticed that. Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, not Jeffrey. And thank you, Mom, for ruining my life.
No, she made it fantastic.
Actually, I'm not going to say that. She's actually in town right now, so
I don't think she's going to hear you. Right?
She'll know.
She'll know?
She'll know.
Okay.
She knows what evil lurks in the hearts of... Wait, I can't finish that.
She knows what wicked this way comes.
What wicked this way comes. Oh, it will be coming later today, Mom.
So we have a whole bunch of questions, and by we, I mean Jeff, because he did the work and I didn't. As always, carrying the heavy load of the show. We've got a whole bunch of questions that we would like you guys to think about when it comes to regarding originality and world building.
I think this one's really important. I have a lot of friends who are creative. Michael, and a whole bunch of other ones. And one of the most common things from my friends I always hear is they're struggling with, is this original? And it's not a bad question. But I think we have a tendency to over-focus on the wrong part of what it means to be original. And so I think we really have to start with trying to figure out, what do we mean when we say, is this work original? Because it's not at a level. You're telling a fictional story there. Boom. That's been done a long time ago.
Well, see, I get into a mental block / argument regarding this because when you break down, it's the argument of originality comes when you break it down. If you don't break it down, you can always say, oh, well, this is original because it's different than other stuff. But when you get to, when you break a story down to, what is it? There's only 3 stories, man versus man, man versus himself, and man versus nature.
I've heard a few different arguments. I think Aristotle had 7. I saw someone who had 2, and it was Journey's Hero or Man Comes to Town or Stranger Comes to Town. And I don't really know if either one of those are true, but ultimately, at a vague level, and probably even a very similar plot has been released a million times before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but for me, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's why we have structure here.
We have structure here. And the reason I wanted to define it first is specifically this point is words do have meanings. And I think when people typically get trapped, it's because they're not looking to what the word means. What it is, and obviously, I'm not saying go out and plagiarize other people's works. That's wrong. In certain contexts, if you take from it, give credit where credit's due. If the type of work you're doing is appropriate, a lot of times in fiction, if you have an author who you really like their magic system and you just sort of incorporate that into your world, you might be a scumbag, but where did they get it from? Is this something like from actual Earth?
But then are you then just justifying that you're copying at that point?
But did they?
That's neither here nor there.
That goes back to what is original. The thing is, if you're really copying exactly how things are done, you're definitely plagiarizing. But if you're if you're taking this idea that you have these group of people who mix in modern religion with older religions, and they perform rituals to perform certain magical tasks, that predates fiction.
Right.
I mean, like voodoo's been around for a really long time since Christianity has merged with sort of usually African paganism.
I was going to say paganism.
Paganism in general, though, it merged in a lot of areas where Christianity took over. And there are different religions like voodoo in other parts of the world as well, too. But they take the established mandated religion and they push their pantheon into it so they can still hold on to their beliefs. And most of them believe that they can use magic through this system. So the person who first came up with it in a fantasy book really ripped it off as well, if you think about it.
Well, there's also something to be said for somebody on the other side of the world having the same idea as you. He didn't
spontaneously,
yeah. Like I've had that where I had a great idea that I thought was very original for a story or for a character or whatever, and then discovered later that something else was already out there, and it was something I had not been exposed to. It wasn't like one of those things like you read it and forgot about it, so it's in the back of your mind, and then you pull it back up thinking it's an original idea, when in actuality it's totally an idea you'd already been exposed to, but where you just discover someone else just had the same idea as you.
Yeah, and in my case, it always happens to be this Neil Gaiman guy who spies on me.
Yeah, you've told me about that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into it again.
No, you should go into it a little bit.
I'll go into it a little bit. So essentially, I actually really struggled with this question myself a long time ago. What is original? Because I had the wrong definition in my head.
Well, while you're right there on definition, I pulled up the definition of originality, so I just want to read it real quick. The ability to think independently and creatively, a writer of great originality, the quality of being novel or unusual. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, if you read the show notes, you'd actually see that exact phrase in here.
What do you? Did you have it in here?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice. You know I don't read the show notes.
You don't pay attention. We have all the structure, all the stuff you want to talk about, but we'll go to the order that Mike happens to think about.
Well, look, it's on page 2, and I'm on page 1.
He's plagiarizing me, plagiarizing the dictionary.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So, Neil Gaiman?
So what happened was years ago, I actually really did struggle a lot with what is original and all this kind of stuff. And I remember it was back in the late 90s, Stardust came out from Neil Gaiman. And some people, and that was really not related to anything that I've ever done before, except for the fact that there was a city in there called Highwall. And anyone who had played in my world for the previous 15 years played in a Highwall. So there was some more jesting stuff, about oh, Neil Gaiman's using Highwall, you can't use that word anymore, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And which isn't true, but the thing was, it kind of caught me off guard, and I was offended and hurt, and I felt unoriginal at that moment because he used a word that I did. Because the idea of naming a city after a physical descriptor of where it's located is so original.
I was about to say, Jeff, that's kind of commonplace.
Which is the whole reason I came up with the name.
Welcome to Longshire.
Yeah, because there's sort of this sort of English Germanic feel of the area, and how did the English name their cities? Avon on the river. Why? Because it's Avon County, and this is the part on the river. Not very original city names. Utilitarian maybe, but not original. And so I didn't get too mad about that until later on. I was running a space game, and I had the idea and I'd had this idea for years where there are a certain core number of creatures that are what we call gods, and different cultures call them different names. And the gods actually use this to gain strength. The god of death in one culture might be the god of law and order in another one, because he's trying to maximize the belief in him that generates his power. So I was having this one where all of the old gods were sort of punks, and, they had been sort of usurped at a period of time. And in modern society in the space age, that there were these other more important gods, but these old school gods were sick of it, and they were trying to come back. And I was going to actually incorporate like elements of terrorism, because that was topical to me at the moment. Not nearly as topical as today, but and how they were going to use fear and emotions to bring back belief in them, to give them the advantage over these new usurper gods. Mm-hmm. And then about 3 months into it, I had several people come up and talk to me about the similarities of this freaking stupid, idiotic child's book by Neil Gaiman called American Gods, which I guess has some of those themes in there. I don't know if the terrorism angle, but definitely the idea of new versus old gods. And I was ripping mad. I was so mad that I actually forced them to shoot themselves in an alternate time and space and create a paradox which blew up the universe. And then after I did that, I found out that Neil Gaiman had wrote a Doctor Who episode that did the same thing, I think. I'm making that one up. But essentially, it really frustrated me. And it was the thing that started my journey down to this definition of what does it really mean to be original? Because really, are there anything new? And for a while, you go into this theory where there is nothing new. And then when you're in the depressed stage after you keep getting beaten out by this person who's probably a better writer, probably a better storyteller, he looks better. He just beats me in every fashion. He actually arm wrestled me once, just slaughtered me.
Which is saying something. You're a strong man.
I'm a strong man, and he doesn't look strong, but boy, he just ripped my arm in half. But you know what? I was so mad at Neil Gaiman, I've not talked to him since. I want to point that out here in the show.
That's his loss. That is his loss.
Yeah. I mean, granted, he probably never knew who I was, even when he arm wrestled me and embarrassed me in front of all my friends and family. I was just a nobody to him. God. Okay.
Just one more person in a long line of arm wrestling victims.
Neil Gaiman.
If you actually look on the web, you can find a list of Neil Gaiman arm wrestling victims.
There's over 30,000 people whose lives he's destroyed through arm wrestling.
Yes, he's a bad man.
This isn't the fiction writer in me coming out at all.
Well, you are a fiction writer. You lie.
Yeah. But and I have some friends who get to the point where they actually want to share stuff out, but they're so obsessed with this idea of what it is to be original, they never go beyond.
It becomes self-defeating.
It becomes self-defeating. You stop yourself. It's letting the fear voices in your head, which we really have to do an episode on that at some point. Probably again. I'm sure we've done one. Yeah, write that down, Mike, so we don't forget that.
Right.
Not like we would. You might, but I wouldn't. But it stops you in your trap. And that's the types of things I like to call world builder traps. You get stuck in the world building because, this isn't original enough. This isn't original enough. And the thing is, it goes back to precisely what Mike said when he, out of order, read the dictionary definition. And there's a couple ones. I like the first one better because it's a little bit more measurable of what is independent and creative versus what is novel. Novel is strictly subjective. If I take the idea of a very like Paul Bunyan, and I find a tribe in Australia or Africa who's never heard it before, they're like, "Wow, that's really original,"
right? And
it's not, because that would just be plagiarized. But so to me, working independently and creatively, thinking that way when you're doing your work, that's really the key to being original. You are influenced by all of the things you've read, all of the things you've seen. Whether you like them or dislike them, they will influence the output of your work. And the important thing is to not say, "Oh, I wish I had a magic system like book X," or "I wish I, could come up with a culture just like this one in this world.
If I could only make a character as deep as this character."
Yeah, and characters are the harder one because characters are all based on people we know in ways anyway. It might be a caricature of a part of them, but and especially the great characters you come across in fiction, sometimes you can really fall in love with those kind of characters if they were well done, which is why you probably like them. But, that's what really forces you down the path of starting to imitate. So you really have to turn off that mind. I don't consume, when I'm world building or I'm writing, any fiction related to the genre. I don't do it because I don't want to be influenced at that moment. And I will always give credit to things that have influenced me, stuff like, I won't say Neil Gaiman because obviously I've never heard of the guy before. but Dungeons and Dragons, GURPS, Vampire, Werewolf, White Wolf.
All the White Wolf stuff.
The White Wolf stuff. The JRR, whatever his name is, the Token writer.
Tolkien or Token?
Yes. I've been countless actual real life cultures and stuff. I mean, if you look at my library like Mike can, and
Michael
can. Yeah, that's right. You're here today. But, there's a lot of books on philosophy, religion, cultural stories, role-playing games. There's a book of games, which is very interesting. I'd like a lot of eclectic stuff. And then there's Kristen's side, which is like knitting and taxes. Yawn. I mean, yeah.
It always cracks me up.
I don't know if she could hear me.
I want to go down the list, but at the same time, like a lot of the things you're saying are jogging my mind and making me think about stuff. I'm just going to say the comment now because I don't want to forget the comment, even if we come to a better spot in the show notes to talk
where
about
I'm
it.
supposed to talk about it?
Is when it comes. Thanks. Good point for Jeff.
Yes.
Is that the idea of having an original idea, just like what you're talking about right now? I think now is a good time to talk about it. Is I don't think that as a writer, as a creator, you should get too caught up in is what I am writing this. Like you'll get caught up in the minutia of what of this is original, and I think it's a pitfall to spend too much time ensuring originality and thus potentially sacrificing quality. Like I think it's more important that you write a solid story, that you create a solid thing, and a lot of times the reasons really good stories end up being really good and subsequently maybe a little unoriginal is because they work. You know, it's an archetype, it's a structure, it's a it's a formula that
there's
works.
a reason why there's a term formula.
There's a reason there's so many romantic comedies out there. Boy meets girl, boy and girl dig each other. Conflict ensues because they didn't know something about each other that they suddenly discover. There's Act 2. And then there's a resolution. They come to find terms with it. Act 3, lovey-kissy, and the end.
And now
there's a reason there's a million movies like that.
Pause the podcast and write down every movie you've heard with that plot.
Yeah. Like...
or seen.
Right. And same thing, like, your 3-act structure when it comes to like almost any type of story, whether it's, this force against that force, or it's boy meets girl, or like any one of we had another episode where we talked about the different story structures like this. The reason it works is because it works. Yeah. Like people enjoy that sort of thing. So you don't have, I think that what's more important when it comes to originality is that you're in there, that your perspective is in there.
And especially that if you work independent and creatively, it's an original work.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's yours.
So it's really a simple argument to win if you don't get caught up in it. It's worth thinking about, but realize ultimately if you've worked creatively, you worked independently, you have achieved an original work. Yes, there are things that have been influenced within there. And when you give interviews and talk about what influences you, talk about those things. They deserve it. They deserve the credit.
I like the stuff that I work on, but at the same time, it's the originality thing certainly has cropped up for me too. Yeah. I will always fall back on Dawn. I am jealous of her originality. Like she's on her 5th book, I think. And Dawn Metcalf, please look up her stuff and buy her books. She's brilliant.
We will link her interview in this episode.
And her books, if are they on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay. She has.
Are they on Amazon?
Oh, I assumed they were. Yeah. She has a book that has not been published that I hope she gets published because it's one of the most original ideas I've ever heard of, and I feel that the world deserves that idea. Sure. That to have that idea out in the lexicon, and of course some of the books she's already published. Like you're like, wow, like how does she come up with that stuff? But I don't turn her brilliance into my degradation. No. Like her being brilliant and her having great original ideas doesn't make me less original. It just makes us different.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to beat up on my own creativity because there's other people out there like Neil Gaiman who are really good writers. Or Jeff. Jeff's a good writer too.
One of the things to keep in mind really is, when it comes to originality, and this really is a good time to talk about this, even, and formulas is, and I think in the show notes, I've listed a strange math formula I came up for something along the lines of this, which is a joke making fun of all of this because you need math to make jokes. And
remind me, keep going.
Yeah, I don't even remember the formula. I just was BSing it when I was writing out the article.
Oh, so you weren't? So can I interrupt you then, or are you going somewhere?
I'm actually going somewhere.
Okay, go ahead.
So the thing, the thing you need to remember, which Mike just completely distracted me from because he interrupted me. No, because Mike's the jerk. Look at the genre that you're planning to write in. This is going to be an epic fantasy. This is going to be a sword and sorcery. Whatever you've chosen.
Like a token fantasy?
A token fantasy. Any kind of token fantasy thing. But what do you have expectations that go through your brain right away when you say it's sword and sorcery? When you say it is this or that, the genre itself, I'm making an action movie. That has connotations. There's an expectation for people who buy and consume that media of what that means. So when you go in there, you're actually presetting your formula.
I want to break into that for just a quick second. You have to understand that with exactly what you're talking about how the human brain works. Mm-hmm. For the human brain to understand, as a person, for you to understand a given thing, you need to compartmentalize it. You'll do it without even realizing it. A lot of times you'll do it intentionally on purpose. So if Jeff says, I have a sword and sorcery story, I immediately have all kinds of things that come into my mind. Okay, let's put that in this box. Sword and sorcery. Okay, that means I'm going to have knights in shining armor. I'm going to have swords. I'm going to have some wizards. There's going to be goblins. Like, I immediately have a bunch of ideas because of what I've already been exposed to. So like any given genre, if you say this is where I'm working, people automatically drum up a bunch of stuff coming from their own experience. It's only because they have to understand.
And I guarantee you this, and if you would then read the story and it was really Pride and Prejudice and the girl had little pointy ears, even if he thought the story was good, he would be let down because he went into it with the expectation that it was sword and sorcery, not something else. So once you pick these genres you're picking in, you're actually presetting in your mind a certain type of formula to deliver an expectation to an audience. Right there, you've setting up a formula for yourself. Whether or not you stick to it strictly, that's different. But if you deliver something outside the formula, the audience who go in to interact with it are going to be shocked. Some might be able to overcome if it's really good, but they're going to go, I don't know if this is sword and sorcery. It's freaking a guy and a girl, and he's kind of a jerk, and well, she's kind of cool, but she doesn't like him, and now they're getting married. Where's the sword and sorcery stuff?
Well,
there was a witch in the third act.
Right. Well, we've talked.
I only do 4 acts.
About 4. The three is for lesser writers. I use a 4th act. Big surprise at the end. That's like oh, you totally derailed me. There was an argument that I was just going to say something like, what were you just saying before you totally jumped the tracks there?
About putting in the incorrect, putting the incorrect genre to something.
No, it was about having a story that, like, I was going to mention, I was going to mention the science fiction thing. Like, good science fiction is not about the content; it's about the context. So it's like, Planet of the Apes is the classic. Planet of the Apes is not about a planet full of apes. It's about, classes. It's about racism. It's about, societal issues, but it's in the guise of a monkey movie. It's in the guise of science fiction. And good science fiction is like that.
That's why Kurt Vonnegut is awesome.
And you'll also look at the other argument that we were talking about, Pride and Prejudice with pointy ears, is I always fall back on the immediate thing. And a lot of people know this, so I'm treading familiar water here, is Lion King and Hamlet. Like, The Lion King is Hamlet. So it's like, everyone's like, oh, The Lion King is such a great story, and it's all great.
I haven't seen that yet. You spoiled the whole movie for me.
You've never seen The Lion King?
I'm lying.
Okay. I'm lying. Very funny. Thank you, Lannister. Well, that's the other thing. Like, I had an argument with a guy at work because he's read two friends of mine have read all the books, all of the Song of Fire and Ice books, and I am just a Game of Thrones viewer. And I was a little annoyed. Oh, actually, what I'm saying could be spoiler territory. I won't describe. There's an occurrence in the last episode that was literally exactly the same as a Shakespeare play. And I was annoyed because I was annoyed, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's read all the books. I was like, yeah, but see, that's annoying because I liked it, but it was literally exactly the same as this Shakespeare play. And he's like, well, have you ever noticed that the Song of Fire and Ice is just really English, history? It's all,
it's the literature. War of Roses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like Stark, York, Lannister, Lancaster. He's like, the names are even very similar.
Especially for Lannister. You're like,
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when I wasn't familiar with it, I never made that parallel. So I was like, oh yeah, and there's a lot of other Shakespeare themes, of course, that he draws from. So it's kind of like, well, even the most popular fiction right now is not incredibly original.
No, and really, once again, the best stories come from history.
But it works.
The best stories come from history, and a lot of times, a lot of stories that you love are an event of history that is being retold in fiction, or sometimes being I don't know how many times the Caesar, Cleopatra, Octavius incident has been told. It's been a lot. And I really enjoy those, but after a while, you're like, there's some pretty other interesting parts of history. Could we get to something different? Even in Roman history, there's other parts that have pretty exciting stories. I kind of know that he's going to fall in love with this girl in Egypt. He's going to go home, be declared dictator. Spoiler alert: he'll be killed on the Ides of March, and then one of his closest companions and his adopted son and this jerk off who's part of the team are going to work up. They're going to defeat the forces that murdered him, and then Octavius is going to somehow defeat them all and become emperor. So let's go quickly, and this one won't take nearly as long. And this is sort of the IT person to me. We got to say what's out of scope here. We got to say what I don't care about when I'm talking about originality. And the first thing is archetype characters. There's a big debate today about working in underrepresented archetypes. That is awesome.
Say that slower.
There's a big debate today about working in underrepresented archetypes.
Underrepresented archetypes?
Yeah, so
what would be an underrepresented archetype?
Non-Western style heroes, people of color, people of various genders.
Oh, just getting people out in stories who are generally not in stories.
Not in stories.
Like the hero is always a white woman or a white man.
And usually the man.
Yeah, usually.
And the thing to remember is that's possibly a noble goal or possibly selfish because you're trying to take advantage of the circumstance. Whatever your reasoning is unimportant. That in of itself, those types of decisions do not make a work original. All they do is they make it that. The originality would still have to happen within the context of working independently and creatively while you do that. So don't get caught up in trying to work in features that haven't been seen before, because you have to remember that it does not make it original just to include something that, have you ever seen I'm not going to finish that statement. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say
you saw the look
I saw. Yeah. Be careful. Be careful what you choose right here.
And then on top of that, you have to realize being original does not make a work good. And there's a story here from one of our friends, or at least my friend. I don't know if you know him, and I'm not going to mention the name here to protect the innocent person who I'm about to possibly disparage one of his friends. And he was invited to a game, and the game was they wanted to do something original for science fiction, and they wanted to do really what the game master considered a realistic view of non-carbon-based life forms. So he created a silicon-based race, which is a common, I hate to say that's sort of a common way to do that because it's very similar in composition to carbon. Mm-hmm. And my friend was excited because, I'm so sick of all of the stuff that I always play all the time. Let me go do this completely original thing. And when I was talking to him about it, he was like, he achieved the original part. It was original, but he completely could not connect with anything in the game. He kind of went through the motions of playing, but didn't even really enjoy the game very much because he couldn't connect to it in any way.
It was too foreign.
It was possibly too original. And that could be true for a period of time or forever. Who knows? Because some things are panned at the time they come out, and then 20 years later, people are like, wow, that's prophetic. Yeah. And maybe it was ahead of it. Maybe it's ahead of its time. But for at least this one person in this one incident, he won in getting an original, but it didn't make it fun or enjoyable.
Yeah. And I mean, that's almost a cautionary tale for shooting for the moon when it comes to originality. Yeah. There's lots of examples where somebody came up with something that was very original, but nobody was ready for it. And then it took time. Yeah. I keep thinking throughout this conversation, I keep coming up with music parallels, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there's a documentary called ABCD. It's called A Band Named Death. Excellent. Or a band called Death, ABCD, a band called Death. So it was a rock band, I believe, out of Detroit, all black band. And they were doing like speed punk in, I think, the early 70s.
Oh, wow.
Like way before.
So it was almost like the generator of thrash.
Yes. Yeah. Way before the British punk invasion, way before, all the Dead Milkmen and Sex Pistols and all that sort of stuff became very big in modern music knowledge.
And even sooner than speed metal started coming about, which was much in the mid 80s when it started.
Yeah. This stuff is way before that. And honestly, you should watch it because you'd really like one, the fact that it's delivered as a documentary. It was produced by Scott Mosier, who is Kevin Smith's producer and longtime friend. A great project. The basic gist is these very young group, I think it was 2 or 3 brothers, and they were really into like rock music, but they were like, it's not enough. It needs to be more this or more that. And they started making it, and they recorded their own masters. And of course, there's some sadness in the tale, but I believe it was the oldest brother who was really the progenitor of what they created and insisted that the masters be maintained. And he's like, somebody is gonna want this at some point.
Yeah.
And like they were gonna get signed, but the label or the radio station who was gonna, who was getting behind them, they're like, you have to change the name of the band. Like you can't call your band Death. And they're like, they refused. They said the name of the band is Death. It's a band called Death. Like we're not changing the name. And of course, nothing ever happened. But here it is, 50 years later, and people have rediscovered it. And the masters have been put out there, and people are like, holy crap, this music's amazing. It's really original.
Yeah.
But it took 40, 50 years. And now at least one of the band members has passed away. So it's like, here's this beautiful jewel in the rough,
So really the cautionary tale is originality might not always be what you desire the most. Originality in your story is a good thing always, I believe, but it might not really be the thing you're focusing on. So make sure you know what you want.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I'm not saying don't shoot for originality. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying this is a very extreme example of it being different.
Every work of fiction needs to have a level of originality to it. What we believe is originality to it. But the thing is, once again, it's the independent and creativity that goes into it that makes it original. But that's probably not your ultimate desire in it. It's either sharing it or having fun with it in some way. And if those aren't your things, then it's really just to be original. There are artists who've done that, and some do even get successful in their own lifetimes.
Okay. David Bowie. David Bowie.
One of the things I think you can think about is, what are you trying to make original, really? Because is it really everything in the book? I mean, do you need to come up with new articles for English because the other ones have been used? Probably not. There's probably some portion of it. Maybe it's the plot. Maybe it's the form of the story. Maybe it is everything. But the thing is, know what you want to get original and work on the originality of that by separating yourself from influences that could get to it while you're making it. And now, next is, how do we make something original? And you're going to say you're crazy because you keep saying you focus on working independently and creatively. And yes, and the only reason I'm doing it again is to drive the point home of really what it means. It's the independent and creative work that you put into it that makes it original. If you want to make something original, focus on that. And if it appears nothing the same way as that really original person that you've read before its work, that's fine, because if it did look just like it, it definitely wouldn't be original.
I think for me, the thing that I always think about when it comes to this is, again, another Kevin Smith reference. Watch the movie Red State. The thing that's amazing about Red State is yes, the movie is amazing. I love that movie. But he was very vocal about when he was writing the movie is that his process for writing the movie, and it's not like, look, I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, so it's easy to please me when it comes to what he makes, but it's nothing like what he makes. Like you watch Clerks, Mallrats, Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, Dogma, all these movies, Chasing Amy. And then you watch Red State, and Red State is nothing like any of those movies. What he did, it was the writing process of making that movie is whenever he started to see where the story was going, he changed its direction. So you watch that movie, and I guarantee you will not be able to tell what's going to happen. And you'll be shocked as things occur, different events in the movie occur. You'll be like, oh, well, this is going to happen. And then it goes totally sideways. So I think that right there is a great thing to learn from. As soon as you can see where the story is going or predict, and subsequently the reader may be able to very easily predict the actions of a character, have them do something totally opposite or different or just a little left of center. and see where that takes you.
Yeah.
I think that rule of thumb is a great rule to generate originality.
And then some of the takeaways here I want people to think about is when you do determine you want originality in your work, ask yourself a couple questions so you know why you're doing it, because that will influence the amount of effort you put into being original. Because I think probably the most common reason we do it is we don't want to be called, not original.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that thing. So try and get past that and say, really, is it because you have something you want to prove? Like you have this idea in your head and you know it can work and you just want to prove it? Because there's nothing wrong with doing stuff, that have no even plan and it might or might not take off. You will have no clue, but you want to prove that you think something in this, like say you have this crazy idea of putting steam equipment together in a fantasy setting. If you had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have probably laughed at you because I still don't get it. It doesn't appeal to me, but I would have been completely wrong.
Yeah, because now steampunk has turned into a huge thing.
It is a huge thing. And maybe it was because he wanted to prove that people either like the genre or maybe he just wanted to be known for it. Like, I can come up with this whole thing that I haven't seen anything that resembles this before, and I think it'll really work. Maybe the person just wanted to be known for that. So why do you want to do it? But I say ultimately, if you can't answer one question honestly to yourself is, do you want to do it? Is that
want
really
to go
your
to that
focus?
process?
For something completely original, do you really want to? Because that should be the thing that drives how you write. Maybe you just want to write fan fiction and you want to put up for free on blogs. If that's what you want to do that. That's awesome. But do your creative activities because you want to do them. That should always, I think, be at the heart of any creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't struggle through it just because, unless the struggle is part of your process and you want that. But don't. I see people knocking their heads against the wall because they're shooting for something and they realize that they can't stand it. Self-awareness is really something to be, mentioned here.
Yes. And always with humans.
Yeah.
Yes.
To being self-aware and getting that, okay, I'm doing this thing. I really want to do this thing. And then you realize that you don't really want to do that thing. Yeah. You actually just want either the result or you thought it was different than what it actually is. And then you realize maybe this isn't the thing that I want, but you're already committed to it. Don't be afraid to scrap it and try a different thing. Or
finish it and realize it won't be that, It's because one thing is you don't get to expertise in something your first shot. So, don't obsess over it, but practice. And, when you finish that story, maybe you release it, maybe you don't, but then write another one and then write another one.
Yeah, actually
stick at what
I want to go back to what I just said. And I want to say, ignore my last statement because I said, don't be afraid to scrap it and try something different. What you said is better. Finish it. Then start something different.
And put it in the desk drawer if it sucks.
Yeah, but finish it.
If you know anyone who makes nothing bad, give me their name so I can check out what they do.
Yeah, they might not show you everything, but I guarantee you they have some bad stuff. Like I've got a story, and I had a long conversation with Dawn about this one time, trying to explain to her my idea, and very, very basically, it's a math problem, like literally on page algebraic problem that is the skeletal version of an extrapolated story. And she's like, what? I'm like, I write a math problem and that is the story. She's like, I don't get it. The problem is the story? And I'm like, yes. And I guess I just didn't do a good job explaining it. And maybe I'm not doing a good job explaining it now.
Yeah, because I'm looking at you like,
but it works. But in my head,
you see
it makes perfect sense.
And I would call that original.
And the basic idea is that every single thing within the problem is a story element or a character or whatever. And then I in turn build the story around the problem. It makes perfect sense to me, but I haven't done it yet. I haven't written it yet.
Yeah. Show me, don't tell me. And one other thing to keep in mind
share that because that's good. Show me, don't tell me is what Jeff said.
Okay. And I'm going to actually link an article too about there's actually been studies done on trying too hard. When you try and do something too hard, guess what? You typically underperform yourself. And this is shown a lot of studies, especially in athletics that go around this, but I think there's a truth to it in all things. When you're trying too hard to accomplish something, you almost always underperform. If you're trying too hard to get rid of your hook and then you start slicing the ball.
Can't believe you went to golf. I was just thinking about golf analogies.
Yeah. Well, that's a common one. even though I don't play golf, but I get the idea that you're trying so hard to get it to not go the one way, it then goes the other way, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that's the old adage, if it goes left, it's a slice. If it goes right, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle.
Yeah. But, and most athletes too, they practice to a point to where when they are executing, they're not thinking to themselves, what do I need to make my feet move this way to trick that person to go that way and I go around them this way? They've just learned through practice that they just perform. And when you're just performing, you'll always do better than when you're thinking about the performance. It's kind of like being an actor where you kind of know your lines. It's really hard to come through with good emotion and convince people of, this character when you're struggling to say the words the character is supposed to say. You need to memorize the words before you can deliver the performance. And that's true in any creative work. You just got to practice it and practice it and practice it. And get help from a producer like Boo, who just came up to help us. And so now,
Outdoor Kitty Studios.
As the producer comes in, marks the end of the official show. So, Mike, why don't you tell us what the world building task of the day is? And there's none written down.
I was going to say I would love to, but there is nothing on the show notes. All right, so the world builder task for the day. I'm going to say you're probably working on a project already. Mm-hmm. If you are not working on a project, I'll say sketch out an idea and shoot for originality for originality's sake, just as an exercise. If you're already working on a project, maybe a subplot or a character or something, it doesn't have to be something you're going to use, but try to sit down and create something small that is original for original's sake, just to see where it takes you. Mm-hmm. And then you can use what you've learned. You can do that exercise a few times or whatever, and then try to employ it into whatever project you're actually working on. Jeff, why don't you tell us what the real world task of the day is?
I still don't know how you got either one of those 2 points.
Well, I got this one because of you spitting on your own face.
That was Boo.
No.
Pushing the microphone into my head.
Earlier.
And that was me talking. I was in such an awesome groove.
Is that what that was? Yeah. Okay.
No.
The producer's messing around with the microphone, and Jeff's having difficulty.
I no longer own this microphone, so if the sound quality goes bad, we'll blame.
No, I'm giving myself a point for coming up with a great world builder task on the fly when you have nothing on the show notes. So now let's see what you can do with the real world task.
The real world task is study and work with people on how you award points in games. So the points
I'm going to take away your point. I'm going to take that point away. Yeah. Nice
because
try.
Some people just make up these rules on the fly because they're really bad cheaters.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No.
Real world task.
May I speak here, Boo?
Every time Jeff tries to speak, Boo, one of his many cats, is pushing the microphone arm away from him so that he can't, or into his mouth.
It makes a random, but no, a good real world task for today when it comes to this thing is, if you're looking for ways to improve your art, don't stick in your genre only. If you're an author, do some other forms of art just to get the creative juices flowing. Practice your creativity. If you love writing fantasy novels, read old literature that has nothing to do. Like, just go grab a great piece of literature. Go get Gilgamesh. And don't think it's Noah's flood because it's a completely different name of a character.
Yeah. The world of the extraordinary does not exist within your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So get outside your comfort zone.
Get outside your comfort zone. Whenever you expand your mind, that helps with your creativity in the long run. So, practice your creativity by doing forms of art that you suck. Like, I want to go make a clay model later. No, I'm not. But I should because I can't do it. But it would actually help me. Well, I could, but you wouldn't call it a figure.
Oh, I was thinking like a pinch pot or, like a cat bowl or something.
It's a round silicon-based creature.
How come all of my pottery ends up being ashtrays?
Well, my race of silicon-based creatures are all round. So this is Bob, the silicon creature. He rolls this way.
Kind of looks like a sphere, Jeff.
Don't be unoriginal. But yeah, practice. Break your comfort zone in art. It's not always just doing things that you're not comfortable, like having to go to work and stuff, but, go take some art time and draw. And obviously just something that you're interested in beyond what you normally do. Don't do something you hate just to do it. But, I've always wished I could draw better. Draw some more. You know, those kind of things allow your mind to free flow and think. And it's all about creating those neuron paths and getting them locked in place. So get out there and do it. And don't play games with Mike because he cheats on the scoring.
Well, duh. I mean, look, if you want to win, the fastest way to win is to cheat. Yeah. Can't argue with that. You got a tease?
Yeah, the tease for next episode is the balancing act.
And as always, make sure to go to gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at Gardul.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike while the myth rolls high.